Greetings, ACA families. I'm grateful to be able to reflect briefly on what it is that we've been discussing as far as virtue in the lower school over the past several weeks in November and then into December as well, namely the virtue of honesty. We've talked about courage and courtesy previously, and in many ways, honesty is one of those virtues that we kind of hope goes without saying. It's not a common thing for people to go out and say, you know what we should do is we should be dishonest. But rather, we want to assume that whether it's easy or difficult, that we should be pursuing honesty. So we find ways, even when it's not easy to have those discussions, to be developing this within students, whether it's in one-on-one conversations or talking as a class as a whole. And one of the ways that we do this, of course, is through the context of story. A story that we read recently in our middle elementary is that we talked about the story called The Pot. And in this story, there's a child named Ping who's growing up in China. And at this point, there are flowers everywhere, and there's a serious desire to see flowers just thrive and flourish, and the emperor is no exception to that desire. And as the emperor is growing old and seeing that, in fact, he's going to need to be replaced, he decides he has such an appreciation for flowers that somehow he wants flowers to decide what actually happens. So what does he do? He invites all the children to come to pick up seeds from the palace, and over the course of the next year, they would grow a flower and come back in a year, and that would somehow be a part of the decision for who is going to be emperor. And one of these children named Ping really wants to do well in this process, picks up the seeds, puts it in rich soil in this pot, ultimately helps this flower grow is what he's hoping, but it doesn't happen. He waters it, he takes care of it faithfully, he does all the right things, and 1 month passes, 2 months pass, nothing happens. So a year passes, and he goes along with so many of his friends back to the emperor, and they've got thriving flowers, they've got plants, they've got all sorts of things that all the other boys and girls have been able to grow over the course of the past year, and yet there's Ping with a pot that is filled with soil, but nothing to have grown, and he looks ashamed. So the emperor looks out, sees what all these boys and girls have, sees this remarkable flowers and trees that they have, and thinks this isn't right, looks disturbed. Until finally he sees what Ping has, this pot that is filled with soil but no flower. And he looks encouraged. He lights up and says to Ping, "You will be the next emperor. Because those seeds that you all picked up were cooked. They couldn't have grown. I wanted to see somebody who was faithful in the little things and who was actually honest. And all of you who have grown something didn't use the seeds that I gave." This is one example of many stories that we read to talk about the positive implications of what it looks like to be honest. And we also know the flip side, the negative implications through stories like The Boy Who Cried Wolf. That ultimately we're not just concerned with being honest per se, but being the kind of people who are honest, so the kind of people who can be trusted, who can live with integrity, who can have good relationships. And it's that hope that really drives us to be talking about things like honesty in the classroom, that our students would become the kind of people who can be trusted and who can show value to others by living with integrity and living with honesty. With that in mind, I'm really grateful, as always, to be able to partner with you, and we are thankful as we go into the holidays, especially for the chance to be able to walk alongside you in the education of your children. I would encourage you to be having these kind of conversations at home, even in thinking through ways that your students have discussed honesty in and around the classroom. I hope you all have a fantastic holiday break.